Well guys, this one's going to have to be a little bit different. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, when I was filming this video, the audio cut out, never came back, so I have none of the audio from this video. So I'm going to have to basically try to recreate it as we go along. Now it's been a while since I discovered this, so I'm going to have to kind of fumble my way through, and hopefully I hit the same points at the same time as what I was going for when I actually shot the video. So if you guys can just power through this sort of awkward introduction area of the video, I'd appreciate it, and we'll get on to a more interesting driving portion a little bit later on. But basically what I want to do is introduce you to this 2022 Ford Expedition, and it's kind of an oddball. It's an XLT model, and I specifically asked for this one because typically when we get these press vehicles, they tend to send us the more high-end models like Limited, King Ranches, and everything. When I found out they had an XLT, I was like, send me that one. I want to see something different. And in all honesty, this is probably the model that I would buy if I was looking for an Expedition. I don't really need all the bells and whistles and everything else that you get on the higher end models. And I really like the way this one looked. It's a little bit simpler, a little bit more down to earth, and a little bit more utilitarian, which is something I like in my vehicles. So this particular unit is wearing dark matter gray metallic paint, and it comes with the standard output 3.5 liter EcoBoost, which makes 380 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. Now if you want the highest horsepower version, you've got to step up to like the Timberline or the Stealth. That gets you 440 horsepower and 510 pound-feet of torque. But the really nice thing is no matter which engine version you get, and there's several to have in the Expedition, they're all 3.5 EcoBoosts, you end up with your torque peak at 2250 RPMs, which is absolutely perfect for a truck that weighs as much as this thing does. It's also fitted with really nice 20-inch nickel finish wheels, which I think look great. Now, the 2022 model Expedition does have an updated front end, and the taillights have changed a little bit too, but that change is a little bit more subtle. Now, taking a look in the back, you can lift the rear window alone if you want to do that, which I think is pretty cool. They actually have that feature still on, and you got a ton of room in the cargo space. I typically like leaving that third row folded down, and honestly I would order it without the third row if I was getting one of these for myself, because I'd just rather have the cargo space. I'm not really hauling that many people, but you get a lot of room back here, and if you want to, the seats are electronically folding, so you can put them up, easily haul more people in the back if you want, or just leave them down. Like I said, I'd rather have it just without the third row, but that's a personal choice type deal. There's also a little bit of hidden storage under your rear cargo floor, and that's where the jack and all the tire changing tools live. Ford even gives you a little cargo net you can use back there too if you want to. But a decent amount of space down there, and this little spot here is where you would lower the spare tire down. You even have some tie down points. The rear lift gate is of course power closed. So in the rear seat area, we've got dual captain chairs on this particular truck, and I really like those. To me, that's the best setup to have on a vehicle like this. I really only want to ever haul 4 people anyways. So if it was available with a rear seat delete and these 2 captain's chairs with a center console in the middle, that's the way I would order one. Ford probably doesn't offer that though. But the rear seat passengers do have their own auxiliary climate controls and plenty of power ports as well. And since this thing's meant to be a family truckster, there's cup holders everywhere. Now if I were taking this thing on a trip in this area between the rear seats, I would probably just go ahead and stash a cooler. And speaking of the seats, even though this thing's an XLT where you would think you're going to get cloth seats, you actually get sort of a leather and vinyl combination, which I think looks pretty good, and with Ford's use of vinyl in the right areas, will probably wear pretty well too. No sunroof on this particular truck, which is exactly how I'd order it. And even though this is a lower trim model, you still get the nice screen in the dash, not the ridiculously huge one that's coming in a lot of stuff now, but just, I think, the appropriately sized one. And you get dual zone climate control, which I like. I think that's a nice option to have. These are big vehicles, so one side might want to be a little bit warmer or cooler than the other, so it's nice to have that option. The heated and cooled front seats are also really nice too. And another thing I really like is you get actual physical buttons and knobs here. It's not just all on a touch screen, so you have to look down at the screen to figure out how you're adjusting the radio or the climate control or something like that, having a physical button, you can get your muscle memory working if you drive this thing enough and not have to take your eyes off the road to make a minor adjustment. You get a little bit of vinyl stitching on the dash and the center console, which I think looks pretty good. Gives it a little bit of higher end look. You do have your phone warmer down here in the console as well, and speaking of the console, this thing is deep. You've got a ton of storage in this thing. Also like that they give you a place to put a couple pins because you never know when you need to take a note. And one of the things I am not crazy about, it does have the dial-a-gear, switch gear selector. I would rather have just a column shifter or your regular just handle shifter, but actually if I could have it the way I want it, this thing would have a manual transmission, but we can forget about that ever happening. And it's got the same little above the glove box storage area that the F-150 and Super Duty have. Moving over to the driver's side, you've got some Easter egg terrain images molded into the side of the dash, which, okay, that's kind of cool. So we don't have the full digital dash. This one has a mixture of analog gauges and a digital dash in the center, which I think works pretty good. I don't need the full digital dash, I just kind of like to have it. But like I said, this is an XLT, and for that, I think you're getting a pretty good dash setup. I do like the white stitching on the steering wheel. I think that looks pretty good, but I don't know what's up with the molded in color on the airbag cover. It doesn't match anything and just ended up looking like chalky white. And maybe that's not this truck's fault or Ford's fault. Somebody could have used something to clean it. I don't know, but that's just something that sort of stood out to me. Probably, if I had to guess, somebody was cleaning this thing up and just used the wrong type of cleaner. You might actually be able to bring that back around and it looked the way it's supposed to. And like most new Fords, they are attempting to put as many buttons as possible here on the steering wheel. Another huge plus for this truck is the integrated trailer brake controller. I've loved this system ever since Ford introduced it, I think in the 2005 Super Duty. It works great. It keeps you from having to drill holes in your dash to install an aftermarket piece or something, so I really like that. This particular truck has the heavy duty trailer tow package. It's an $800 option, and I would definitely go for that if I was ordering one of these things. It also has a Pro Trailer Backup Assist system, which I've never used because I can actually back up a trailer. But if you can't, you might want to get this because it could probably save you and your wife from saying some very terrible things to each other at the boat ramp. I also like this little trim built into the door panel. I think that looks pretty good, and it just keeps it from looking cheap. It gives you just enough dress up to make this thing look pretty good, I think. Moving under the hood, this is where your 3.5 liter EcoBoost lives. Yes, it does have an EGR cooler, which I'm not a huge fan of, and it's got a spaghetti monster full of just hoses and tubes and wires and everything running under here. It's definitely not a pretty engine, and I'm kind of surprised it doesn't have like a noise attenuating pad over top of it, you know, an engine cover. A lot of the EcoBoost 3.5s come with like a foam one. This doesn't have it. But I do like the huge air intake scoop that Ford's putting on a lot of stuff now. That is really, really nice, and as long as you can get good clean air into there, this thing's going to make a lot of power. You got your DI pump over here on top. Plugs are easy to get to. I like that about these EcoBoost engines. But all in all, she's pretty well packed in here. This also has the electric brake booster system. Not a huge fan of that because it can do some weird stuff from time to time, but it does allow for more integration with the safety systems on this big family SUV. And I do like the updated styling on the 2022 Expedition. I think the new front end looks pretty good, and it sets it apart from the trucks, which, you know, this thing shares a lot of parts with the F-150, so it's nice to differentiate it where you can. All right, let's get this bad boy out on the road. This thing is pretty nice. I think the first thing we need to do is, of course, let's do a stop and go walk pull. Load the suspension up, and she takes off pretty nicely. Now, you're obviously not going to be winning any drag races with a 6,000 plus pound SUV, but this thing is not bad. It gets up out of its own way. The 3.5 EcoBoost makes pretty good power. This is, of course, not the high output version, but it's adequate. You're not going to be, I mean, it's not like you're running around with 300 inline six under the hood. I mean, this is stout little engine, twin turbos, all aluminum, dual overhead can. You guys know how the thing, how it works. You know, it's 3.5 liter EcoBoost, 10R80. Does have the lane keeping assist. We got a little bit of rain going on now, so this is going to be a little bit different than our normal drive time reviews. But this thing is just made to haul people and stuff to places you want to go. And you're not going to find a whole lot better vehicle than the Expedition for that. I really like these. I had one in for testing about 2 years ago that was a King Ranch, and it was a two-wheel drive. And I have to say that I think the two-wheel drive is the way to go on this. If you do not have to have four-wheel drive, the two-wheel drive got like 2 miles, 2.5 miles per gallon better. This one's averaging like 19.5, and I feel like I got 22 out of that two-wheel drive King Ranch Expedition. And it drove better. The steering felt better in it and everything. This is good. There's nothing wrong with it, but I feel like the steering was just tuned better, and the front suspension was definitely tuned better on that two-wheel drive. That being said, this has, you know, the max trailer tow package and all that kind of stuff, so this could be just a little bit firmer than what a normal Expedition without those options would be loaded up, you know, what it would feel like. But the brakes are fantastic. It's super quiet inside. That was one of the things that I really noticed about it was you don't get a ton of road noise, you don't get a ton of engine noise. It's a very sanitized drive. I would be very, very comfortable taking this thing on 600, 700, 800 mile road trips. And you could put people in the back. They don't feel like they're being penalized. They got plenty of room. They got all their plugs for their various devices and all that kind of stuff. And you're still getting decent mileage. I think, you know, if you actually got this thing out on the highway and got it in its groove up into 10th gear, it's going to knock down right at 20 miles to the gallon, which is pretty good for something this big and heavy. Rides well, can tow a ton with it. I mean, it's got a fully boxed frame, got that independent rear suspension, four-wheel independent suspension that the Expeditions had for years, and that's a really, it was a game changer when they came out with that. And to have that on such a big SUV makes a huge difference to me as far as ride comfort, handling, all that. You don't miss having solid axles with this thing. It's very nice. And of course, once they went to the aluminum body, the driving dynamics got better. It's not as top heavy and everything, and they put more weight back down into the chassis where you want it. So overall, Expedition, fantastic vehicle. Still probably my favorite big Ford if I have to drive one. I like this better than the F-150 actually. If I actually have to drive it daily, this would be what I would pick, and I would probably actually get the XLT version. I really like this thing. It has all the options I want. Nice seats. That's got the center stack that I really like, and air conditioned seats, huge here in the South. So this is probably the setup I would go for. I think this is a really nice way to ride around, and I can't say enough about it. It's good. So if you guys are looking to move people and stuff to various places, check out the new Expedition, new for 2022. Got a new front end on it. Headlights work really well. So check it out. I don't think you guys will be disappointed. And until next time, always head over to SVTPerformance.com for all the latest news, reviews, and information on your favorite Ford-powered vehicles and this behemoth.